at SunGard Frankfurt City Days, and today we're going to talk about cloud and financial services. So, cloud is talked a lot about in the press recently, cloud computing, but it's not actually a new phenomenon, is it? I mean, flexible infrastructure. How long have banks been dealing with cloud?
Well, I can only speak for Deutsche Bank, but we have been dealing with cloud computing for at least 6 to 7 years. It wasn't called cloud computing at that time, obviously, but cloud computing is, as you know, based on virtual machines. So an operating system and the applications don't have a physical server by themselves, but you can run several virtual machines on one physical server. And that's something we have been done since 2003, 2004. And we have offered services in that regard. So users could set up their own virtual machines with their own application. That was adopted very well. And that's nothing else really than cloud computing. But I would say the real breakthrough for most financial institutions came within the last 2 to 3 years. And that's when this term cloud computing also developed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to maybe move into some risks. I mean, when a bank's going to, we'll call it cloud because everyone's calling it cloud computing now. What are some of the top risks that banks are dealing with when implementing cloud?
I think the people who ask us about cloud computing are, and it's different from other technological trends that we've seen, are not the people who want to buy the technology or who want to set it up. Is people from the higher ranks of the organizations, especially in banks. They want to understand what the risk is and where their data is and what they're going to tell the regulators, where they've saved their data, where it's traveled to, and so on. So it's really in the upper ranks of the organization, which also shows there's a really new trend. And the other people who talk to us about it are private equity funds who want to invest into the technology. So we expect it to grow dramatically, and people want to stay on top of it, especially in the financial organizations. They want to know what's the risk related with it. Is it going to make our IT landscape more secure? Is it going to require new rules, new technology, and so on?
I mean, is security a really big issue with firms dealing with cloud? I mean, how are some banks looking at dealing with security?
I guess what the cloud is changing is because you're hosting your data somewhere, you are running your applications somewhere. There's certainly a concern about any crossover effects between applications in the cloud, and at the same time about the question whether the data are safe or whether there's any chance for people to access data being not allowed to. So this is really what has changed with regard to traditional data center business.
Okay.
Maybe just to add on to that, I think security is a perceived risk at the moment, but I think a lot is related to the fact that many people don't have a real good understanding yet on what cloud computing really means. In my opinion, I can only say I think the security risk in a cloud is not higher than in a normal physical data center. A lot of things can go wrong there. Clearly, one thing gets more difficult since you run virtual machines over many blades, many racks, or even many computer centers. You may not be able to identify directly. You cannot say, like in the past, okay, blade number 17 in rack 25 in data center A failed, so I know exactly which application failed. So if the blade fails, I don't know which virtual machines, not necessarily know which virtual machines were on this data center at this time. So you have to take provisions for that, but there's software for that which can handle that. So this difficulty can be overcome. On the other hand, the nice thing on cloud computing is I can very easily duplicate virtual machines and the data associated with it and can make it thus even more secure. And personally, if I do something, if I, let's say, search some risky websites in the internet, I rather do that in a virtual machine on top of my operating system, because if I get a virus by doing that, it's only the virtual machine which is affected, but not my host operating system, which I run it on there.
Good advice for everyone looking at risky
but
websites.
Clemens, that's also, I think, the task that we have to face up to. Ensure that is more secure than the traditional data center, and then also educate people about it.
Right.
Because the people who ask us the questions are the people who are being asked by the regulators. And if they don't understand it, then the regulator won't understand
Yeah,
it.
I
It's going to be
wanted
a
to
problem.
move into what are the regulators demanding? What do they want to know?
The regulators basically deal with cloud computing in a very similar way as they deal with outsourcing in general. And we have, at Deutsche Bank, we have gained a lot of experience in that regard because we have outsourced our European continental data centers in 2003 to IBM. And we had some very, very intense audits by the German BaFin in that regard. So basically, they want to know that the data are encrypted, that the outsourcing operator or the operator of the cloud data center cannot really access the data. They want to know where the data are located, in which data centers, and that the whole thing basically is run according to the standards required by regulated industry like the financial industry. So
But I
the
mean,
BaFin has its rules, and they apply to a cloud outsourcing just as well as to let's say a standard IT outsourcing, infrastructure outsourcing.
Is that the key to dealing with regulators, being able to know exactly where your data is and how to access it and control it? Is that the main
right?
issue?
And the regulators have to be allowed to access this data center, where it's our, let's say, if we outsource to an Amazon data center or to the Frankfurt Cloud data center, then the regulators will request that they are allowed to go into the data center and convince themselves that the data are secure, that the racks are secured physically and virtually. And so that's required. So if let's say a cloud provider refuses to let the regulators or even the internal auditors of a bank in there, that's already a knockout criteria for outsourcing. That's quite clear.
And in many cases, it's a technical solution that's required to make it transparent, to get access to the data at the time you're being asked the question by the SEC or whoever asked the questions, and they tend to be a bit impatient when they want to ask questions. And it's not a matter of putting more regulation in place. It's a matter of putting the right tools into the hand of the administrators to be able to track and audit what's been done, where's it gone, has it been deleted properly, and so on.
And clearly this is something which is particularly strong always when a new technology comes up. So after a while, when, let's say, 4 or 5 financial institutions have gone to a cloud, to an external cloud provider, then the regulators will see it a lot more relaxed than the first one, which does that, like always. Yeah.
I wanted to sort of end this discussion with this talk about, what are banks and financial services firms using cloud for right now? I mean, email comes up a lot, and sort of where are they going to evolve? How is cloud usage going to evolve in the future?
Well, obviously, the first most important point is you save a lot of cost because you can use the resources, your IT resources, a lot more efficiently. We have done statistics that in a standard IT implementation, the resource usage is about 10% of less the CPU resource usage in a normal data center. So with cloud computing, you can use it a lot more efficiently, up to, let's say, 70-80%. Second advantage is you can deal with your customers in a resource-based payment system, pay-per-use type models you can implement. It's much easier to standardize within a cloud, and it's fairly easy to port applications from standard environment into clouds because the operating system is the same as it runs on a physical machine.
So I mean, so where are we going?
And I think cloud services are used and will be used on different levels. Obviously, as Clemens said, it's the very first thing you would consider is the virtualized infrastructure, using virtual machines. Other things might be software as a service solutions like Salesforce.com. I think that got pretty good traction.
Comes up a lot, yeah.
And I'd say the next wave we will be seeing is platform as a service, where you're having things like databases, message queues, application service, business process management, document management, something like this, being provided as a service to people developing solutions in the cloud or meshing up solutions in the cloud from SaaS applications and from on-premise applications. So we have hybrid solutions, and the platform is used to integrate those.
Excellent. Yeah.
I would think that initially you'd see that applications move into the cloud that have strong peaks in demand, because that's when you can make best use of the cloud. And that includes like year-end runs and this type of a thing, or complicated calculations, this type of thing. And it's always struck me as odd that IT service providers have never been able to offer true pay-per-use models for all these years. I mean, it's always been a discussion. And there are many industries out there, not least the lawyers, who have a high cost base and still offer a true pay-per-use model. The IT industry has never really done this, and we believe that's going to change.
Yeah, and not surprisingly, in cloud computing, you see different providers now than in the traditional outsourcing providers are not the big cloud providers. An IBM, an EDS, an Accenture are not the big cloud. They don't have the big cloud offerings. The big cloud offerings right now have newcomers like Amazon, interestingly enough, who are originally in a completely different business.
Excellent. Well, I thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us about cloud. Thanks.
Thank you.